Hello, Abby. Good morning. Hello, Abby. Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me well?
I certainly can. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Very well.
Wonderful.
So you are in which group at CETLOE, Abby?
I'm a learning experience designer.
Okay.
So I worked with I know you've worked with several of my team. I'm Mary Helen maybe and Jared or
I worked with Michael. I worked
Michael.
with Chad. I worked with Yanju and Martha. But I don't
Yeah.
if they belong to your group or another group.
No, but we work with them.
Okay, very good. I'm so glad that you were teaming up with Elizabeth.
Yes. Yeah.
Metaverse.
It's been a fun and exciting. We've traveled, to distant virtual worlds in this course. So
Yeah, it's very much like what I remember from my childhood, a little gadget called the Viewmaster.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that. I was actually just talking with someone about how the Viewmaster is coming back around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They used to be basically colored slides and they would move one after the other in a
Yeah.
circle. And it was the best way, like you all are doing with Metaverse, to dream about the rest of the globe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
What was in the Viewmaster that you saw as a child?
I had pictures from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I remember pictures of the Alps. I remember countries like France and Germany. Um, and then maybe some from Africa on wildlife.
Yeah.
Those memories are not as vivid as the ones from Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. They were powerful.
Yes, absolutely. So there's somebody else from CETLOE joining also, right?
Victoria, I'm not sure if she'll be able to join. She may be joining us, I think, depending on how her other commitments this morning go.
Okay, very good. Hello, Nate. Hello, Marie. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure we are communicating.
Yes, I hear you, Milan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Hello, everyone else.
Abby is part of the presenting group, and Nate, he's just giving me a thumbs up that he can hear us.
Okay, Abby, I don't know, really.
Yeah, she's from CETLOE.
Oh, okay. Well, I should know her. I should know her.
Yeah. Many of us work very closely with very resourceful teams at CETLOE. So
yeah, there are many of us. You
Right.
don't know me.
So I hope Elizabeth is joining us in a minute or two. Hello, good morning, Elizabeth. How are you? Can you hear me?
It's probably on here.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
how are you all?
No.
No, doesn't look like. Are you able to hear me, Elizabeth?
I hear.
No. I can hear her.
Yeah, right.
Okay, were y'all speaking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now I can hear you, sorry.
we were trying to figure out whether you can hear us or not.
Now I can.
Good.
Let me try and share my screen.
Yeah, let me make you a co-host like I promised. And then you should be able to do it.
Okay.
Okay. Now you can try as a co-host.
Okay. Let me make it. Cool.
Yeah, great.
Should I stop sharing or leave
Yeah,
it?
yes, you can stop sharing and then in a few minutes, I'll just introduce you and then you can get going.
Great.
So it's nice to see Abby on your team, and Victoria, she said, may not be able to join.
Darn. Bolu might join us.
So you have a team of GRAs also helping all of you.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the things that we'll talk about sort of unofficially, but there are Victoria has 2 GRAs, and so they are helping do the research. They have helped do the research
Great.
tremendously. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you do need different members of the team doing different things for a big project like this.
Yes, that is definitely an unexpected learning that has come out of this. And yeah, so we're excited to kind of talk about that.
Mhm.
We call it decentralized teaching.
Mhm. Oh, good. New word, decentralized teaching.
Why not hop on the DeFi bandwagon?
Yes. Hello, Jacobus. Can you hear me? Jacobus? Maybe he just logged in.
I can hear you.
Oh, great.
I did just log in.
Okay. And
Looking forward to Elizabeth's presentation here.
yeah,
It'll be a little wild and woolly.
Those are the best. Oops, I guess I'm upside down, huh?
yes. Interesting. You were upside down, but the capital was looking straight.
Well, that's because the background is stationary, but I use a webcam, actually a dock cam for this. And so it's always upside down until I flip it back. And so,
Oh.
but I'm going to turn my camera off, okay?
So let's just give the others a couple of minutes to join.
All good.
There's Bolu
Bolu.
trying to join. Yes. Hello, Jerry. Just making sure you can hear me okay.
Yeah, you're good, Belinda.
Okay, thank you.
This is a very intense day today because this afternoon is our big student showcase at the Creative Media Industries Institute. So all of the students will be showing their worlds. So that's why you're getting such a last minute response from me.
I understand. What time is that session?
It's from 3 to 6 at the Creative Media Industries Institute. Everybody is welcome.
Very good. And where is that located?
So you know where 25 Park Place is, Woodruff Park, and then the College of Arts and Sciences for the most part in Woodruff Park. So it's the glass building that says CMII
Okay.
on the outside. It'll be, the whole building will be crazy activated.
Wow. Okay. So it's only a sort of in-person meeting. You cannot Zoom in. Right?
Correct. We will have, MetaMic will be in virtual. Now you could join one of our virtual worlds. You can join in Hyperfi, which we will talk about.
So 3 o'clock is the time.
3 to 6, anytime in between.
Okay. Very good. That should be a nice sequel to this.
Mm-hmm.
I see Bob is trying to join. So the CMII is part of the College of Arts and Sciences.
Correct. It's incredibly confusing, not to be, mistaken for the College of the Arts.
Right.
And not to be mistaken with Film and Media, which is in College of the Arts, but the Creative Media Industries Institute is in College of Arts and Sciences.
Welcome to Georgia State.
And then there is the Department of Communications, right?
And there is the Department of Communication where journalism resides.
And they also should be teaching film studies, or they don't?
Oh boy. You have to get out your swords if you want to talk about that.
I think that's where they normally reside, unless you all have, decentralized things enough that films are out of there.
Yeah, I need to put my focus on here so that I don't get messages.
Okay, one more minute for whoever wants to join, and then we'll get going. Okay, so it's about 5 minutes past noon, so we should get going. This is the fourth and last session this semester of the first Fridays for SOTL seminar series. And as many of you know, we are in the 9th year, and the series is sponsored by the Department of Finance. Hopefully by fall, we should be conducting these in person when we can again enjoy real pizza and not just virtual pizza. So let me introduce our speaker today briefly. Elizabeth Strickler is Director of the Media, Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Creative Media Industries Institute, College of Arts and Sciences. And she also jointly holds an appointment at the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute at Robinson College. Her eclectic interests can be seen in her academic credentials. She holds a BA in philosophy, a BS in computer science, and an MFA in digital filmmaking and art. Today, Elizabeth will be speaking to all of us about self and community in the metaverse, a research study in collaboration with Abby Greenbaum, who joins us here, who's a course designer, and also Victoria Patterson, research designer at CETLOE, that we all know and collaborate with. So please do join me in welcoming her to the First Fridays seminar forum. And with that, I'll let you take over my virtual microphone.
Okay, great. Thank you all, and thanks for coming. And this is super exciting because we haven't really presented on this yet, and we're really looking to kind of get some feedback. And so you all are our guinea pigs, and appreciate you all being here. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the screen. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about today is how this class got started, then how we planned it, then what we did in class so far, what we studied, what we've learned, and then what's next. So in spring of 2022, I taught a class. Well, I actually taught 3 classes: Innovation Studio for the Robinson College of Business graduate students, and then New Ventures in Creative Media for CMII. And in that class, I worked with CETLOE, with Taylor Birch, because they wanted to study, they needed a subject for their master thesis. And we attempted to study what it would be like to create and teach in virtual worlds. And so we did a study, and I'm not going to go too deep into that because we don't have time, but that's how this got started, was through that research study that we did and trying to teach some classes in Innovation Studio in virtual worlds. We called it 2D, 2.5D, and 3D. So the important thing about that Melinda introduced is that I am jointly appointed, and between 2 colleges, which is very complicated at the university. But one of the requirements for my joint appointment was to teach a class that would be 50% business school students and 50% CMI students. And so that's what this class is. So, and I do want to say that, how the research came about was because I had done the research beforehand. I was given a course designer, which is Abby, who's here with us today. And we started to develop the class, but I mentioned that it would be really nice if we could include and continue the research that had been done before. And I'm not really sure through which magic, I was gifted a researcher, which is Victoria, and her 2 graduate students, Bolu and Rose. And then on top of that, 2 multimedia specialists who help us do some of the world building. I only have one, which is Liv here, because we also had some external people, and Robert works within CETLOE, but he also did a Blender tutorial. So I kind of consider him, external and teaching. And then some other industry professionals that I know who also came in and gave some presentations and tutorials on things that are too complicated or things that I'm not a deep diver in. So I'm not going to read this, and y'all have already read this, but I will go into sort of how we planned. So, Abigail and I started in the fall of 2022 to start building the class. And what was great was that, we started thinking about what it is that we're trying to do. Originally, I was just like, I want to see if we can use, virtual worlds to have more immersive classes, particularly since we're in online. And because I teach so much online and I really enjoy online teaching, I wanted to see if we could go deeper into these more immersive worlds. But, the technology is really not there. And so I basically am using the class to see how to create immersive learning experiences, co-create them with the students, with researchers, with course designers, and with my expertise. So, you can see here the things that that we set about trying to have happen in the class. And ultimately to have the students be successful, successful and adaptable and responsible participants in a world that's changing so fast that even we are having a really hard time keeping up. This is, I'm going to let I'm going to let Abigail talk about this after I go through all this, but this is the design strategy that she designed to help us kind of situate the class and understand how we were going to develop the class. And this is important because this was the development strategy for how we were going to build the class, but we also used and what we were going to put in the class, but it's also how we built the class.
Elizabeth, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Here? I am wondering with this kind of specialized skills course, what kind of prereqs did the students have before they joined your class?
Thank you for that question, because I forgot to mention it. 0. That was super imperative to us that they come with 0 tech skills, 0 prerequisites. At CMII, we do deep diving into Unreal Engine and, really deep skill set. But I also recognize that a lot of times there's not a lot of reflection in those classes, but in more theory classes, I realize there's not any technology. So we're trying to kind of split the difference, which is complicated, but that's what we're doing. So, so to the end of the human-centered design and, design thinking and the things that I teach in most of my classes, we decided to eat our own dog food and, go about prototyping the class before even actually teaching it. And so to that end, we ran, we took one of the activities and ran it as a, 2.5-hour class. But what that enabled us to do was not only just test how the teaching would go, whether we could implement it in 2.5 hours, but also test how difficult is the technology? Does the technology work on the computers? And can we get everybody who's not up to speed, using these new techs? But also, what are the pre and post survey questions that we need to ask? How do we do observations in a computer room? And, just kind of really prepping us. This was hugely helpful. I'm going to show you some of the things that okay, so this is, one of the core, this is one of the course goals and learning outcomes.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
I hope you don't mind questions.
I love them. I love them.
Okay, so with what you need students to accomplish in this course, do you have an upper limit on the number of students you allow in a section?
So we have 24, and it really just depends on the number of computers in a classroom. Mm-hmm. And this, something that's really important that we're going to talk about a little bit is that we really tried to use open source, low code, web accessible, mobile accessible applications for almost the entire time. We couldn't do that for every single thing, but the requirements are not huge. Okay. But it does require a student to have a computer. However, that, so.
Okay. I'm just going to make the audience members aware that if you have questions for Elizabeth, as I've said in the chat box, please type them in the chat box and I'll provide them to her as and when there is a pause. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go too deep into this, but what we wanted to do was we wanted to sort of explore what an avatar was, but we didn't want to precede the students with what they were. So we had them do the thing before they reflected, and then reflect sort of afterwards. So first we had them draw an avatar that they would, we said, draw an avatar that you would like to navigate a virtual world. So then they drew, and they talked about the tool of the pen. And then we had them create in one of the easiest avatar creation tools, which is Ready Player Me. And so then they created their avatars in there. I think this is a really great example of how people are reflecting and, you know, imagining themselves as virtual beings. And whoops, empty slide. Oh, this is, I guess this is a video, but we're not going to. Then we went into a more sophisticated tool, which is called MetaHuman, which really can get super precise, realistic avatars. And then we had the students reflect on all of that. And that was an incredible experience. And so this was the prototype that we did, and then we replicated it in the class. So now I'm going to kind of go over sort of the things that we did in the class after doing the prototype and after really designing the class. So, you know, we broke it into 3 parts. Let's see, we'll get to the other parts. I forget what they are, but this is what's pretty funny. In the, these are our actual students that we ended up teaching, or at least this was their perception of themselves as avatars when they were able to use any tool possible. So we also incorporated a lot of generative AI in this class, because as the virtual worlds are being built, it's very complicated to build. And so assistive technology such as AI is incredibly helpful. We'll get to my AI policy a little bit later, but this is how the students wanted to have themselves perceived, which I think is very interesting. And so we talked a lot about the tensions and what the tools allowed and what the skills allowed versus what they were capable of. But we also talked a lot about if you were a you know, if you were a business owner, what choice, it's one thing to be a consumer. You can be very critical of every choice that you're given and all the things that aren't allowed. But then we also had the students reflect on what it would be like to be a business owner, and what choices do you allow your end users to have, and where the tensions are, and how do you sort of make those choices. Yeah, so then we needed to look into, oh yeah, we also talked a lot about science fiction and what the future looks like, because a huge part of what we were trying to study that I'm excited to, you know, to share with you all is like how students perceived their themselves in the future and how they perceived the future. And this was something that we did some, you know, a lot of our survey questions on is, you know, one's ability to have impact. So yeah, so that's this we already went over. We already went over this. So yeah, then we went into more of the you know, thinking about what virtual worlds the students actually engaged in. And so that was also interesting because they gave presentations to each other on virtual worlds that they engaged in. And those were things like Grand Theft Auto, Roblox, Minecraft, VR chat. So that was really helpful to have the students bring to their peers virtual worlds that they engaged in, and to kind of start to understand what virtual worlds are through your peers.
So you have VR/XR, virtual reality we sort of are familiar with. What is extended reality?
Yeah, so there's sort of a striation from completely real world to completely virtual world. And so virtual reality would be where you put on the headset and you're completely in a virtual world and nothing of the real world sort of is involved. And but in between real world and virtual world is augmented reality, mixed reality, and where the virtual world and the augmented world kind of overlay on top of each other. So a lot of people are using sort of this term XR to imply any kind of augmentation or virtuality in your worlds.
So if I were to think of this as a sort of linear progression, we go from face-to-face classes to online classes, first synchronous, then asynchronous. Then we go into a virtual reality world, and then we go into an extended reality. Is that a good way of?
Yeah. That's an interesting way. I'll have to think about it through the teaching lens specifically. And yeah, I think that we are definitely learning that fully virtual, like fully immersive headset is not really doable all the time. And so we're also trying to kind of understand that as well. And, you'll get to see some of that here. Let me see, I think, yeah. And so I think I've got some, I'm going to skip over. Okay. So here are the students this is full VR where they can't see anything but these virtual worlds that they're playing in right now. So they're using a prototyping tool called Shapes XR, which is super easy to use, where you can kind of build with like building blocks a space that you would like to create. And that's what they're doing here. And you can see they have the headsets and they have haptics, which is the hand controls. They all got to take these home for the semester as well. But this is not exactly what they're seeing, but this is kind of what they're seeing. So we talked a lot about, when, how you enter into a new virtual space and how calm it might need to be versus how active it needs to be, and how you might need to do transitioning into the world and out of the world. And this is sort of an exemplary image of like when you're really like at a party and it's kind of crazy, but it's hard to just what we say spawn directly into a world like that. Then the final goal of the class was for the students to co-create in a team a new virtual learning experience. And they were to observe all the things that they do on a campus and replicate it, but not an exact like digital twinning where you take the college campus and then just make a perfect replica of it, because we studied a lot about what is better in the real world and then what is better in the virtual world, and how can you amplify the impact of a virtual world. And so we're going to see some of the, so networks and communities. So this is the students brainstorming using design thinking, just like we did, in what they do on campus, and then what they do, and then how they could perceive those things, the outcomes of those things in virtual worlds. So yeah, this is just brainstorming. Another empty. Okay. This is them. Oh darn. Oh well, this is just them in virtual worlds creating, I think. Yeah. So then we went into the creations and the solutions. Okay. So here they are creating the virtual worlds. And these are some of the virtual worlds, and I didn't make videos of them because I didn't quite have time, but this is the lobby area where they will come in and then they can go to the 7 different worlds that were created. And okay, so this is the, this is called Eden. And this was one where students wanted sort of a meditative, quiet space to contemplate and reflect, that was not busy. And it has these different areas. It has little wading pools, and it has like this all white garden, and it has a Zen garden, and you walk over a bridge to get there. So this was one of the worlds. This was the science lab. And in this world, they wanted to do some science experiments. And I think this one does some kind of volcano, sort of how a volcano functions. So, you know, one of the so all of the worlds are in prototype form, because it's pretty hard to get to fully functioning, immersive, interactive virtual worlds. But all of these are navigable, and some things will happen in the worlds. And what's really great about them is that they are accessible by phone, computer, or headset. They don't require any special technology. It works in a web browser. The only problem is that the application that we ultimately ended up going with is you need a VPN at Georgia State, because for some reason Georgia State won't let us go to hyperfi.io. I've put in a request for them to open to allow access to that world. And another important point is that so I have taught a class in Web3, and we talked a lot about owning your own data and what the implications of that are in worlds like, you know, in platforms like Facebook. And so these worlds are Web3 worlds, and they have to have a Web3 crypto wallet. They don't have to put any money in it, but they have to have a Web3 wallet in order to in order to edit these worlds, because they own their own data, and they have learned that concept, and they're incredibly excited about that concept. And this is something that Abigail is going to speak to a little bit later.
Another question for you, Elizabeth, is I'm thinking about entrepreneurship students at Robinson College. And you listed the learning outcomes for all the students, but if they are just majoring in entrepreneurship, what kinds of applications of this do they learn in the class?
So basically, they're learning how you know, Web3 technology. That they learned about blockchain. They learned about Web3 technology. They learned about virtual world building and immersive, you know, worlds. They learned about generative AI. And so I wouldn't want an entrepreneur that doesn't know about these things. You know, I feel like, you know, even though we're not a technology school, if you're not at least aware of these technologies and these trends, then I think it's going to be very, very hard to be entrepreneurial in the current landscape. So entrepreneurial capacity was one of our learning outcomes.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh yeah, so here's a library. This is what we call the Giving Cafe. And I haven't seen, so these are all due at 3 o'clock today, which they will be showing at the showcase. So I just took stills, but they're all completely, you know, immersive, and you can run around them. And I'm actually being a goblin right now, which is one of the most highly valued NFTs in the NFT world. So, you know, anyway, we talked a lot about creating avatars, and I'm a goblin at the moment. Yeah. Oh, and this one was really fun, and I'm super excited about it. This one, you go through, and there's kind of little, they're not perfect holograms, but you go through this world and you select the and there's, I don't think yeah, I think you can see Booker on one side, and these are all the different professors at CMII, and you can run up to each of the professors. And right now you can only read about them, but they wanted to have them be avatars that would speak to you. So we'll see where we get with that. Oh yeah, so we did use AI in a large capacity, from learning how to create scripts in Blender, to using AI to create the virtual backgrounds. For some of them, we used a generative tool called Blockade Labs, where you could create your background in any form you wanted. And we also used some technologies where you could scan a 3D object and then put that 3D object into your virtual world. And then we also used LiDAR scanning, where you could scan like an environment, like an office, and then replicate that in your virtual world. So lots of tools. Yeah, so this is kind of, so I think this is just, yeah. So now let's get into what we studied. So we studied sort of transform. So we studied two things, which I like to call vertical and horizontal. So, the horizontal learning is more the transformative mindset shifts and learning. And Victoria helped us, find the right literature to base the questions on. So we definitely were looking at sort of the one's capacity to envision themselves in a successful future, ways to envision their world as being successful in the future, as opposed to a dystopian world, ways to understand what their responsibilities were in those worlds. So that was, and then ways in which they have the capacity to have agency and impact in the future. Yeah, so those were some of the things that we studied. That's that's the horizontal. The vertical was just straight up skills. So another thing that I made all the students do is document their learning and create a website. Because I feel that if they don't have the capacity to just do some basic technology, I just like to embed some basic practical skills in in technology. So those are important things. Another important thing would be understanding file types, understanding where files are stored, understanding how to convert a GLB file to an OBJ file. And you don't even need to know what that is, but just knowing different file types and just having digital literacy at a level that enables you to be impactful. Yeah. So yeah, is there another question? I saw that there was no. Okay. All right. So here is some of the pre-course survey. Oh, actually, I guess this is post activity survey. So we did a pre-activity survey, which we can talk about in a little bit, but this was the post-activity survey to kind of get a feel for what the students felt about the technology and whether it was engaging to them. Because one of the things that was important to me was to not just be an advocate, like to not be a salesperson. And you have to be very careful about that. So I needed for the technology to have real meaning for the students. And I would need in my capacity to teach that. And if it didn't, then, we need to understand that.
Elizabeth, I know you started this in fall 2022, so this is just the second semester of the course.
Mhm.
But do you have some results or feedback received from these surveys given to the students?
Yes, we do, and that's what we're gonna get to. And yeah, really, this is the first time that this class has actually been taught. There was a component of it that was there was activities that were embedded in a couple of other, in the design sprint and in the fall of 2020. Oh yeah, you're right, fall of 2022. You're right. Yeah. So here, let's see. These are emerging themes, but okay, Abigail, step in here. Yeah, you can go ahead and talk a little bit about what we've learned so far and then what the emerging themes are.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely. And just so I'm not sure if you saw, but Victoria is able to join us. So she is here as well by phone. So
Oh, awesome.
everybody.
Yeah. So yeah, you speak and then let's let Victoria speak.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming today and listening. As Elizabeth mentioned, I'm a learning experience designer at CETLOE, and I was the course designer assigned to this particular project. It's been a fun one, of course. They all are. And I think going back to our design strategy for a little bit before I get into the themes, Elizabeth mentioned that we were using human-centered design, and really in this course, thinking about long-term and short-term impacts that we wanted the course to have for students as part of our design process was important, because while our long-term goal is students who have the agency to create and build the worlds they want using whatever technologies are available, that is hard to measure in a semester-long course. And we know in the short term that students also need to have like some of that digital literacy that Elizabeth was talking about and the ability to evaluate and learn new technologies. So really thinking about impact in the short term, measurable way, as well as our sort of big goals and dreams. And while it's good for us to do our own thinking about what we want the course to be, the more important part, I think, in some ways was to gather insight into learner experience through usability and activity testing. Elizabeth mentioned that we did a design sprint. So we designed one course activity, and in a partnership with the Digital Learners to Leaders course, we actually tested out that activity, got student feedback, documented the student experience through surveys and observations and interviews. And that was so valuable to us in terms of knowing, okay, what do students actually think? How are students actually experiencing the learning? And so for example, one theme that emerged from that was that when students are doing something new, such as entering a virtual world with an avatar, they have a sense of anxiety if they don't have a clear purpose, if the reason for being in the new environment isn't clear to them. So we were able to take that principle and apply it to everything we did in the course, make sure that everything we did had a transparent, clear, immediately legible purpose. So if the students were learning Blender, which is a fairly complex 3D modeling, 3D asset creation tool, we had them build a chair. So they knew immediately where they were and what they were trying to do. Of course, we don't have the luxury of testing every single activity with that kind of depth, but finding ways to capture student experience and get student feedback early on allows us to kind of apply those principles to everything we do in the course. So that so far has been a big learning, just that students need clear, transparent, meaningful purpose in what they're doing with a new technology, that's kind of essential to the learning of new technologies. We've completed the pre-course survey, the pre-course interviews, and all the focus groups for this. This is our first full semester of teaching the course. It's our first semester of IRB. So we still have data coming in. We haven't had a chance to look at everything yet, but we are seeing some emerging themes. One is that the engagement seems to improve when activities challenge students to learn more complex skills and technologies, kind of within that baseline of what Elizabeth was talking about of low code, accessible, web-based tools options. Students do really find value when they perceive that they're able to do something new or that they're challenged, and that tool. Is someone saying something?
Yeah. Marie, did you have a question?
Maybe not.
Okay.
Well, let me know if there is a question. Yeah, so that they really, if they're learning something new, something complex, something challenging, and if they see it aligning with their personal and professional goals, so that's one thing we've noticed. And we're also noticing a really strong preference for tools and platforms where students own their creation and control their data, and also where they can use what they've made in the tool kind of beyond the tool and for their own purposes. So that interoperability is seeming to be pretty important. They also, to activities and places where they can that facilitate creative expression, I think.
So, Abby,
Yeah.
question for you is, when they engage in these activities, given that the class size is a maximum of 24, do you put them in teams of 3 or 4 students each, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that we are coming up against in this course is that there's a challenge. Traditionally in course design, you have a subject matter expert, but that's a more complicated position when the subject matter is changing day to day and week to week. You know, an instructor might learn a platform, and then 2 weeks later, when it's time to do it in class, the platform has changed, the interface has changed. So positioning students as co-teachers and co-learners is really important. So yes, we have had sort of more formally structured group activities and also just peer-to-peer learning in the classroom in terms of troubleshooting and problem solving. That's been essential to the course design.
Good.
Abigail?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think that is all. Just one more thing that I was going to say relating to what I just discussed about the challenge of the subject matter and the rapid change of the technology from a learning design perspective. We know that scaffolding is really important, and I know you all know this, when students are learning, tackling complex skills in projects. But again, when the tools and the landscape is changing so quickly, that scaffolding can be difficult to build. So you might find an amazing tutorial that's perfect for students to use in October, but by November, it's out of date. It doesn't apply to what the platform actually looks like or does. So I'm mentioning that not as so much of a solution yet, but that's another theme that's kind of emerging for us, and a challenge that we've been reflecting on as we kind of go into as we finish out the semester. But I do think, Elizabeth, I don't know if you wanted to talk about the decentralized teaching observations. I think they relate to that. Yeah, I can do that too.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, let me see let me look at what this, whoops, where's my slide?
There it is. Oh, look.
Yeah, there it is.
Perfect.
Well, let me just say one more thing about what Abigail said, which is that, we try to be transparent. And so and kind of model, because I had a really hard time trying to decide between Hyperphi and spatial. Doesn't really matter, but to you all which those are, but we let the students see, okay, we were going to build in spatial, but we've decided to build in Hyperphi because of these reasons, and so they were watching us make these decisions, because that's the kind of decisions that they will make as well in the future, and kind of trying to understand what technology do I use. And it was really gratifying yesterday to watch them just jumping around. Oops, my light just came on, jumping around to all the different tool sets. So yeah, well, I want to make sure, is Victoria here?
Yep, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, before we go into the decentralized teaching, would you talk a little bit about the findings so far in the research?
Yeah, well, I want to say that both of you did a great job already kind of summarizing some of the design of the research. 2 things I just want to add on there was transformative learning theory. Elizabeth already spoke about kind of that horizontal approach. I do encourage anybody to do some more digging into that particular theory, because I think it's a great application here of showing how adults learners' mindsets can really be transformed through the process of reflection and dialogue. And then to jump on to what Abby was saying as well, we also adopted the technology acceptance model for a lot of the survey design, and that's looking at how both the users are their ease of use with the technology, and also their how they perceive the technology as being useful. So going along with what Abby was saying is how our students can look towards using these tools in their future careers and personal interests. We're able to leverage those two models to really get some good data for that. Unfortunately, I am currently at a conference and the Wi-Fi on the Clarkston campus is not working very well, so I can't pull up a lot of the exact data that we have right now. But I will say that we have been showing, I believe, more some more interest and acceptance of tools that I know the students are seeing usefulness into their future. That is showing up in sort of that, both the technology acceptance model. So I view this tool as being very useful, and then also their qualitative responses as well. So for example, I believe that the Blender tool that y'all used most recently had a very complex ability to learn it, but students saw a very high usefulness in their futures. So that has implications for how you teach it in the future, because you can show that there is a high, even though it's a complex tool to learn, it does apply to much of what they might want to do in the future, as opposed to some of the other tools where they may not see that usefulness. I know we're still waiting on some responses for the post course, so it's a little difficult for us to show the change over time. But you know, one of the interesting things is that we did a very comprehensive pre-course survey just to get a sense of where the students were when they entered into the course. And even though these are students who have already opted into a course that is highly technology oriented, highly emerging tech oriented, we do see a pattern that they tend to be more of media consumers than media creators. So we're curious to see if that pattern will extend by the end of the course, or if there is some of that transformative learning going on and their mindsets are changing. We also saw a little bit of fear and trepidation around AI tools. That's certainly a lot in the climate right now. So another item we'll be looking at is how their perceptions of that have changed over time as well.
Thank you, Victoria. Great summary and great partnership with you. And, you know, anecdotally, yesterday, one student told me that the model that they built in Blender gained them a job because the person asked if they had learned something new and in a short period of time, and they were able to show that. And then another student who tells me that she is technologically challenged, told me that she used AI, and she showed me the whole storyboard that she created for another class. It was really beautiful, and she was super excited about it. And then another student who first said that she didn't see how this class had anything to do with her filmmaking has gotten all excited, and she said that she's tried to use animation software before, but now that she's learned Blender, she's super excited. Those are just anecdotes. But so last, and just from seeing, you just heard from Abby and Victoria, and then Bolu, one of the research assistants, graduate research assistants, is on here as well. But we started to realize that what we're doing is some form of decentralized teaching. I don't, you know, I know that probably there's other terms for this, and then I've just, you know, adopted the most recent term. But, you know, I think it's kind of crazy that people would make a class with only one person's perspective, after having done this, and also teach a class where you haven't even tried out some of the, it is a gift to be able to do these kinds of things. And I feel like this class was not the intention at all, but upon doing it and reflecting, when we were talking about what we were going to talk about, what we've learned so far, I feel like this idea of everybody learning all together, everybody creating all together, transparency, without having a complete it. So we're also modeling it for the students as well, so that they learn how to be more collaborative. And Abigail, I know you wanted to speak a little bit on this as well.
I just wanted to make sure we mentioned it, because I think I see it as the challenges of expertise can kind of be answered by some of these partnerships and collaboration.
Yeah.
The idea of decentralized teaching, I like these different points that you use to summarize it.
Mm-hmm.
I am wondering if, decentralized teaching, apart from an active collaboration between faculty and staff like you three are doing currently, does also include students learning in different locations. For example, in the context of this course, do they spend all their time at CMII, or do they also spend some time at CETLOE for reasons of using the recording rooms or anything like that?
No, they mostly use home, working at home versus working, and that was something that we wanted to try to encourage, was that they could do most of this kind of anywhere. Blender, and Blender is a free and open source software like Linux, if you all know. So it's that was another reason why they really liked that. It's very easy to put on most computers, but it does still require, not all these students were going to download it. But I do think that a class like this could be much more, scaled in a variety of ways. And like you said, decentralized, because again, what we're saying is that you can go into these virtual worlds and you can co-create together in these virtual worlds. With HyperFi, they are in groups and they each have their own wallet, and those different groups can co-create in virtual worlds from anywhere. And that's really great. And on not just in a headset, but on just a computer, or even, so that was cool. So you kind of got at, what we've learned so far, which is, here's some statements I think I've got. I don't know if y'all can read those. I didn't do a very good job of that, but these are, what did you like about the technology and what did you dislike? And I thought I had another one. Oh, yeah, I have another one. This is a different one. And then what's next? Yeah, so that pretty much is what we've done so far.
Okay, let me ask the audience members if any of them have any questions, either for you or for Abby or Victoria, because we are running out of time. So let's see if anyone has any questions or comments for any of you.
Well, if you don't, I do encourage you all to come to CMII today if anybody is on campus from anywhere between 3 and 6. I'd love to get any feedback that you all have later on what we could do to improve. I mean, the other difficulty is that we had to create the class in 2 different instantiations. One as a CMII class and one as an E&I class, because E&I, it's an experimental class at this point. And so so next up is to try to get it approved as a permanent class. And I think we might call it something like self and community in virtual worlds and not use the M word. So we're not sure, but that's the next step, to, and then see if we can keep it going and hopefully maybe teach it again and then in spring of 2024.
Okay. Yeah, I see that Victoria has included her email information here. And if, Abby, you want to send that to me too, and Victoria, then I can pass it on to my faculty colleagues if they wish to ask you anything from working with CETLOE in various different roles as instructors in different courses. Okay.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for the session, Elizabeth, and your CETLOE colleagues.
Yeah.
And I hope we get to use this in some context or the other for our students who need to have this set of skills as they move into the future.
Sure. Thank you all for coming and staying for the whole time. And, always looking for feedback or any ideas that you might give us for later.
Jacobus, did you have a question?
No, I just want to say thank you. I think that was very interesting. Years ago, when Second Life just first came out, I used it in class, but of course, this is a very, very different animal you're talking about here. But just, I still find it very interesting to see how one builds community here and get students to reflect about how they present themselves and how they join. Actually, there may be things in 1105 that, which is just the intro to business course where it may be worthwhile getting students to think about that a little bit as they start their college career in business, about how do they see themselves, and and then also how that needs to be modified as they move towards the job market, or if they want to be entrepreneurs. That's of course a very different kind of approach, but I think there's some interesting takeaways here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think along the lines that Jacobus mentioned, I remember years ago I had collaborated with a librarian to educate students on information literacy, because I realized that they just go to Google, download whatever they can see, and they write their papers. And with the help of the librarian, we were able to make them aware of what it is that libraries can offer, either in a physical way or in a online setting by way of resources, and how to be mindful of the quality and the value of those resources.
Yeah.
So similarly, from your talk, I see that for the next 10 years, these students need to be aware not just of information literacy, but a lot of digital literacy that you are providing them an opportunity to learn. So,
well, just one quick statement to Jacobus, which I forgot to mention because I do it in all my classes and have been, but in order to create community, one thing that I use is Discord, and have been using Discord for all my classes. But, in the, slowly, like you all say, there might be ways where students can collaborate or communicate besides just a digital platform, whether it's WhatsApp or GroupMe or Discord, and be something a little bit more, virtual, or immersive. But, like you all said, the world's been at this for a long time and it's still a slow process. So if we recognize that, but hopefully there were lots of different skills in learning, not just like, oh my gosh, virtual worlds are really hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, and have a good weekend. And I hope to keep in touch. And hopefully, if I can make it, I'll be there for a little while this afternoon.
That'd be lovely. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See y'all. Bye.
Thank you, Jacobus. Thanks, Marie and Rob.